They gathered us in the living room like it was Christmas morning, but instead of presents, my mother handed out inheritance documents worth $31 million. My brother Quincy got the company. My sister Bridget got the lakefront mansion. Even my younger brother Dustin got 3 luxury cars. Then my mother turned to me, and the words that came out of her mouth destroyed everything I believed about my life for 32 years. My name is Roland, and I need to tell you what happened that day because it changed absolutely everything. The people sitting in that room weren't strangers. These were the faces I'd seen every morning at breakfast for decades. My mother Patricia, wearing her signature pearls and that navy dress she saved for important occasions. My father Gordon, adjusting his glasses the way he always did when he was nervous. My older brother Quincy, already checking his phone for stock prices even during family meetings. My sister Bridget, perfectly composed with her husband Thomas beside her. And my younger brother Dustin, who for once wasn't cracking jokes. We'd been summoned to this meeting 3 weeks in advance. "Clear your calendars," Patricia had said in that tone that meant this wasn't a request. "March 15th, 2 o'clock sharp. Your father and I have important family business to discuss." I'd driven up from Milwaukee that morning, leaving my veterinary practice in the capable hands of my staff. The whole drive, I'd been thinking this was about Dad's health. He'd had a minor heart episode 2 months earlier, nothing serious but enough to scare us all. I figured they were finally going to retire, maybe hand over the family pharmaceutical distribution business to Quincy, who'd been basically running it anyway for the past 5 years. The family estate sat on 40 acres in Lake Forest, the kind of old money neighborhood where driveways had names and the houses had been passed down for generations. I'd grown up running through these halls, sliding down the mahogany banister when Patricia wasn't looking, building forts with my siblings in the enormous study where we now sat. "Children," my mother began, and I still remember how the afternoon light caught her pearl necklace as she stood behind my father's chair, her hands resting on the leather like she was posing for a portrait. "Your father's recent health scare has made us realize it's time to secure the family legacy. We've spent considerable time with our attorneys ensuring everything is properly arranged." She walked around the desk with surprising efficiency for a woman in her 70s, handing out leather portfolios one by one. The Thornfield family crest was embossed on each one in gold. Quincy got his first, of course, then Bridget, then Dustin. When she reached me, she hesitated for just a second, and something in her eyes flickered. I thought it was emotion about dividing up the family assets. I was wrong. I watched Quincy open his portfolio first. His eyes went wide, and he actually whistled softly. "Mom, Dad, this is incredibly generous," he said, scanning the documents. "The entire company, are you sure?" Bridget gasped when she opened hers. "The Lake Forest house? But you love this place." "We're keeping the condo in Florida," Gordon said, speaking for the first time since we'd sat down. "At our age, the winters here are getting harder." Dustin kept flipping through pages in disbelief. 3 cars? The Bentley, the Ferrari, and the vintage Mustang? He looked up at our parents. "But Dad, you restored that Mustang yourself." "Time to pass things on to the next generation," Gordon said, but he wasn't looking at any of us. His eyes were fixed on a spot on the wall somewhere behind my head. I opened my portfolio. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a cashier's check for $50,000, and a brief note typed on family letterhead. "For your years with our family." The room went completely silent. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, the same clock that had chimed every hour of my childhood. I read the note 3 times, certain I was missing something. I flipped through the portfolio looking for the other documents, the real inheritance, the explanation that would make this make sense. "I don't understand," I said, and my voice sounded strange, like it was coming from someone else's mouth. "Is there another portfolio? Did someone make a mistake at the lawyer's office?" Patricia's face transformed into something I'd never seen before. In 32 years of calling this woman Mom, of watching her host charity galas and garden club meetings, of seeing her handle every social situation with practiced grace. I'd never seen this expression. It was cold, clinical, like she was delivering a diagnosis to a patient she'd never see again. "Roland," she said, and even the way she said my name was different, stripped of the warmth I'd always heard there. "There's something we should have told you years ago. Something we thought would be kinder to keep from you, but given the circumstances, you need to know the truth." My siblings were all staring at me now. Quincy had set down his portfolio. Bridget's hand had found Thomas's arm. Dustin looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. "You were adopted when you were 3 months old," Patricia continued, each word deliberate and measured. "Your birth mother was a teenage girl who couldn't keep you. We took you in through a private adoption agency. We gave you everything our biological children had, the best schools, the same opportunities, the same advantages, but legally, the Thornfield family trust is very specific. It states that only blood relatives can inherit the family assets." The grandfather clock chimed 3 times, marking the hour and the exact moment my entire understanding of who I was shattered into pieces. I thought I had the perfect American dream family. Growing up in the Thornfield household meant private schools where everyone knew your name, country club memberships that opened every door, and Sunday dinners where we'd gather around the 12-seat dining table to laugh about Quincy's latest business ventures or Bridget's charity galas. I was Roland Thornfield, the middle child who chose to become a veterinarian instead of joining the family's pharmaceutical distribution empire, and everyone said I was brave for following my own path. My practice in downtown Milwaukee was everything I dreamed it would be. After 6 years of building it from a single-room clinic to a full-service animal hospital, I'd just hired my 10th employee. We were seeing 40 patients a day, sometimes more during emergency hours. The local newspaper had run a feature about us titled "The Vet Who Never Says No," because I'd developed a reputation for treating animals regardless of their owner's ability to pay. My office manager Sandra always shook her head at my bleeding heart, but she'd smile when she said it. "You're too good for this world, Dr. Thornfield," she'd tell me as I stayed late to monitor a rescue dog's recovery, or came in on Sundays to check on surgical patients. "Your parents raised you right." Those words would echo in my mind later, taking on a bitter irony I couldn't have imagined then. But at the time, I wore the Thornfield name with quiet pride. Not the flashy pride that Quincy showed when he closed million-dollar deals, but the steady satisfaction of knowing I was helping creatures who couldn't help themselves while still being part of something larger, something established, something permanent. My girlfriend Melanie understood this about me. She taught kindergarten at a public school in a rough neighborhood, choosing to work where she was needed most rather than at the prestigious private academy that had tried to recruit her. We'd met at a charity fundraiser my mother had organized 2 years earlier. Melanie had been there representing her school, trying to secure funding for new playground equipment. I'd been there because Patricia expected all her children to attend, to present the United Thornfield front that was so important to her. "You're not like the rest of them," Melanie had said on our first real date, after we'd escaped the stuffy fundraiser to get burgers at a local dive. "You've got their polish, but none of their pretension." We'd been talking about marriage lately, real conversations about what our future would look like. She wanted kids, at least 3. I'd grown up with siblings and couldn't imagine raising an only child. We'd even driven through neighborhoods, looking at houses, imagining where we'd put a swing set, which room would be the nursery. Normal dreams. Simple dreams. True dreams, I thought. Every Friday, I maintained a tradition with my father Gordon. Lunch at his private club, the same table overlooking the golf course, the same waiter who'd been serving him for 20 years. Gordon would order his usual grilled salmon, I'd get the club sandwich, and we'd talk about everything except the family business. "You know, Roland," he'd said just 2 weeks before that fateful family meeting, polishing his glasses in that nervous habit of his, "you've always been different from your siblings. More compassionate, more genuine. It's what makes you special." I'd smiled at that, thinking he meant my career choice, my decision to heal instead of pursuing profit margins and market shares. "Someone in this family has to have a soul, right, Dad?" He'd laughed, but it hadn't reached his eyes. Now I understood why. My mother, Patricia, ran the household like she was still the CEO she'd been before marrying my father. Everything had its place, every tradition had its purpose, every family member had their role to play. She'd call me every Sunday at exactly 7 in the evening, not a minute before or after. "Roland, darling," she'd said during that last call before the meeting, "don't forget about next Saturday. It's important. Your father and I have been planning something special. We want all our children there." All our children. The phrase had seemed so natural then, so obvious. Of course, I was one of her children. I had her stubborn streak, everyone said so. I had my father's thoughtful nature. I remembered learning to ride a bike in the estate's long driveway, Gordon running beside me, Patricia cheering from the front steps. I remembered Christmas mornings when we'd all rush downstairs together, Quincy trying to maintain his older brother dignity, while Bridget and Dustin and I tore into presents like wild animals. I remembered feeling safe, feeling loved, feeling like I belonged to something that would last forever. How wrong I had been about everything that mattered. The special family meeting was scheduled for March 15th, a date that's now burned into my memory like a brand. We all gathered in the mahogany-paneled study of my parents' estate, the same room where Gordon had taught me to play chess when I was 7, where I'd hidden behind the leather sofa during thunderstorms, where we'd taken every family Christmas photo for 3 decades. Quincy had flown in from New York on his company jet, looking every inch the corporate executive in his $3,000 suit. Bridget drove up from Chicago with her husband Thomas, her perfection intact despite the 3-hour drive. Even Dustin had shown up sober and on time, a minor miracle that Patricia noted with an approving nod. "Children," my mother began, standing behind my father's chair with her hands positioned perfectly on the leather. "Your father's recent health scare has made us realize it's time to secure the family legacy." She handed out the leather portfolios with practiced precision. When I opened mine to find only that single check and brief note, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. "I don't understand," I said, my voice barely working. "Is there another portfolio? Did someone make a mistake at the lawyer's office?" Patricia's transformation was instant and complete. The woman who had kissed my forehead 10,000 times, who had nursed me through pneumonia when I was 12, who had cried at my veterinary school graduation, simply vanished. In her place stood a stranger wearing my mother's face. "Roland, there's something we should have told you years ago. You were adopted when you were 3 months old. Your birth mother was a teenage girl who couldn't keep you. We took you in, gave you everything, but legally you're not entitled to the Thornfield estate." The words hit me like physical blows. Adopted, 3 months old, not entitled. Each phrase rewrote 32 years of my life in real time. Gordon finally looked at me, his watery blue eyes barely meeting mine before sliding away. "We did care for you, son, but the family trust specifically states blood relatives only. The lawyers were very clear about this when we had everything reviewed." "You're telling me this now?" My voice was rising, cracking like a teenager's. "After 32 years, you're telling me this now?" Quincy cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. "Mom, Dad, this is insane. Roland's our brother. He's always been our brother." "Not by blood," Patricia said sharply, her tone slicing through Quincy's protest. "You were never really one of us, Roland. We gave you a good life, the best education, opportunities most people dream of. That check should help you transition to your new reality." Transition. Like I was changing jobs or moving apartments, not having my entire identity ripped away. Bridget was crying now, silent tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. "This is cruel," she whispered. This is so unnecessarily cruel." Thomas put his arm around her, but his expression was carefully neutral. He'd known, I realized. The son-in-law had known what the son had never been told. "You knew?" I asked them all, my gaze moving from face to face. "You all knew." Patricia's chin lifted slightly, that gesture I'd seen 1,000 times when she was about to deliver an unpleasant truth at a board meeting. "We found out when Quincy turned 18. The lawyers insisted he know, as the eldest and eventual heir to the company. We told Bridget when she got engaged to Thomas, for legal reasons regarding her trust fund. Dustin learned when he turned 21. We made them promise not to tell," Gordon added weakly. "We thought it would be kinder. You were happy. Why destroy that?" "Kinder?" The word came out as almost a laugh. "You thought lying to me my entire life was kinder?" Dustin finally spoke, his voice rough. "This is messed up. Roland saved my life when I was drowning in the pool. He taught me to drive. He covered for me when I crashed Dad's Mercedes. Blood doesn't make someone family." "The law disagrees," Patricia said coolly. "And $50,000 is more than generous, considering we had no legal obligation to give you anything at all." I stood there, my hands shaking, watching my entire past rewrite itself. Every family vacation where I'd wondered why I looked different in the photos. Every time Patricia introduced her children and hesitated microscopically before my name. Every family friend who'd commented that I must take after some distant relative because I looked nothing like my siblings. "Get out," I said quietly. "I beg your pardon?" Patricia's eyebrows rose. I said get out. This is my family home too, or it was until 5 minutes ago. I deserve 5 minutes to process that my entire life has been a lie, so get out. All of you now." They filed out slowly, Quincy squeezing my shoulder as he passed, Bridget sobbing openly, Dustin muttering curses under his breath. Gordon paused at the door. "We did love you," he said quietly. "That was never a lie." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I stood alone in that study, surrounded by portraits of Thornfield ancestors who weren't my ancestors, success stories that weren't my legacy, a family tree I'd just been pruned from with surgical precision. I left that house without saying goodbye, walking past the portraits of Thornfield ancestors in the hallway, past the marks on the kitchen doorframe where Patricia had measured our heights every birthday, past the piano where I'd learned to play Chopin badly. My car knew the way home to Milwaukee, which was good because I couldn't see through the tears that finally came, violent and unstoppable, somewhere around the county line. Melanie was grading papers when I walked into our apartment. She took one look at my face and dropped her red pen. "Roland, what happened? Is it your dad? Did something happen to Gordon?" "They're not my parents," I said, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. "I'm adopted. They've known my whole life. My siblings have known for years. Everyone knew except me." She held me as I sobbed that night, the kind of crying that comes from your soul being ripped apart, the kind that leaves you empty and hollow when it's done. "You're still you," she whispered into my hair as we lay tangled on our bed. "You're still the man who saves animals, who volunteers at the shelter every Saturday, who makes me laugh every morning. They didn't give you that. That's all you." "But who am I?" I asked the ceiling at 3 a.m. "If I'm not Roland Thornfield, who the hell am I?" "You're the man I love," Melanie said firmly. "Everything else is just details." The next morning, rage replaced grief. It came on suddenly while I was making coffee, looking at my veterinary school diploma hanging on the wall. Roland Thornfield, Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. Even my education was stamped with their name, their lie. If the Thornfields could hide this from me for 32 years, what else were they hiding? Who were my biological parents? Why did they give me up? Did they ever think about me? Were they alive? Did I have other siblings somewhere? Real ones who shared my DNA and maybe my stubborn chin, or my weird ability to memorize phone numbers? "I need to find them," I told Melanie over breakfast. My birth parents. I need to know who I really am. She reached across our small kitchen table and took my hand. Then we'll find them, whatever it takes. I found Chester Pike through the most unlikely source, Mrs. Kowalski, whose diabetic cat I'd been treating for 2 years. She mentioned her brother had been missing for 30 years until a private investigator named Chester Pike found him living in Portland under a different name. Chester's office was above a Chinese restaurant on the south side of Milwaukee, up 2 flights of stairs that creaked with every step. The man himself was 70 years old, built like an old linebacker, with sharp eyes that seemed to catalog everything about you in a single glance. Birth parent searches can be tough, Chester warned, his gravelly voice softened by what seemed like genuine sympathy. Sometimes the records are sealed so tight even I can't crack them. Sometimes the people you find don't want to be found. Sometimes the truth hurts more than not knowing. I need to know, I told him, placing his retainer fee on his cluttered desk. My biological parents could be anyone. They could be nobody. They could be dead. But they're my truth, and I have a right to that truth. Chester studied me for a long moment, then pocketed the cash. $200 a day plus expenses. I'll need everything you know, which probably isn't much, and access to any family records you can get your hands on. I have nothing. They told me 3 days ago, said my birth mother was a teenage girl who couldn't keep me, but that could be another lie. Adopted when? When I was 3 months old, December 1992, so I would have been born in September. Chester made notes in a battered notebook. Private adoption. They said they used a private agency. Those are actually easier sometimes. Private agencies mean lawyers, and lawyers mean paper trails. Your adoptive parents used local counsel? Jerome Blackstone in Philadelphia. He handled all their legal work back then. Chester's eyebrows rose. Blackstone? He's still practicing, though he must be pushing 80. That's our starting point. I'll drive out there tomorrow. I'm coming with you, I said. That's not how I usually work. I don't care how you usually work. They stole 32 years of truth from me. I'm not sitting on the sidelines for this. Chester looked at me again with those cataloging eyes, then nodded slowly. Fine. But you follow my lead, and if I tell you to wait in the car, you wait. Some people don't like their past being dug up, and they can get unfriendly about it. We shook hands, his grip firm and reassuring. As I walked back down those creaking stairs, past the smell of dim sum from the restaurant below, I felt something I hadn't felt since that horrible moment in the Thornfield study: purpose. I was going to find out who I really was, even if the truth destroyed what was left of my world. The drive to Philadelphia took 12 hours, with Chester insisting on stopping at every rest stop to stretch his bad knee. Jerome Blackstone's law office occupied the ground floor of a brownstone that had seen better decades, squeezed between a dry cleaner and a bail bondsman. The receptionist, who looked almost as old as Blackstone himself, seemed surprised anyone wanted to see him. He doesn't take new clients anymore, she said, peering at us over reading glasses held together with tape. We're not clients, Chester said, sliding his investigator's license across her desk. We're here about an adoption he handled in 1992. Blackstone was 80 if he was a day, thin as paper, with age spots covering hands that shook slightly as he reviewed Chester's credentials. His office smelled like old books and older cigars, despite the no smoking sign prominently displayed. The Thornfield adoption, he said after Chester explained why we were there. His voice was surprisingly strong for such a frail-looking man. I remember it. Private adoption. Very quiet, very quick. The adoptive parents were quite insistent on discretion. We need the birth parents' names, I said, leaning forward in my chair. Blackstone studied me with rheumy eyes. You're the baby. I'm 32 years old. You're still the baby to me. I handled that adoption myself. The birth mother was very specific about her requirements. The adoptive family had to have money, had to have other children, had to agree to a closed adoption with no contact ever. But you have records, Chester pressed. You know who she was. Blackstone was quiet for so long I thought he might have fallen asleep with his eyes open. Then he stood, moving to an ancient filing cabinet that looked like it belonged in a museum. I kept everything, he said, pulling out a thick folder. Never throw anything away, that's what my father taught me. You never know when the past will come calling. He laid the folder on his desk and opened it carefully, as if it might crumble to dust. Baby boy, born September 3rd, 1992, at Jefferson Hospital. Mother's name was Penelope. Just Penelope on the surrender documents, but I did my due diligence. He pulled out another paper. Penelope Vance, age 19. Father unknown on the birth certificate, but there were cash payments. Significant cash payments. Someone wanted this handled quietly and quickly. Cash? Chester's investigator instincts kicked in. How much cash? $50,000 in 1992, enough to cover all expenses and then some. The bills were sequential, which always struck me as odd, like they came straight from a bank withdrawal, not someone's savings. Do you have an address for Penelope Vance? I asked, my heart hammering. I have what I had then. She listed a Philadelphia address, but she was only there for 3 months after the birth. Then she vanished. The Christmas card I sent that year came back marked, "No longer at this address." Chester was taking photos of every document with his phone. Mind if we take copies? Take the whole file, Blackstone said, pushing it toward us. I'm retiring next month, shutting down the practice. Consider it completing the circle. 2 weeks later, my phone rang while I was in the middle of surgery, removing a tumor from a golden retriever. My assistant held it up so I could see Chester's name on the screen. Tell him I'll call him back, I said, focusing on the delicate work. He says it's urgent, she said. He says you need to hear this now. I had her put it on speaker, my hand still working steadily despite the adrenaline suddenly coursing through me. Chester, I'm in surgery, what is it? Roland, you need to sit down. I'm literally holding a scalpel. What did you find? I found your birth mother, Penelope Vance. She died 5 years ago from breast cancer, but Roland, she left something. A letter with a law firm in New York to be given to you if you ever came looking. My hands paused for just a second. What does it say? Your biological father, Roland. Your father is Mitchell Cray. The forceps slipped from my hand, clattering on the surgical tray. My assistant looked at me with alarm, but I couldn't speak. The name echoed in my head like a bell tolling. Mitchell Cray. The Mitchell Cray who owned Cray Industries, one of the biggest logistics and shipping companies in America. The billionaire whose face graced Forbes magazine every year. The man whose eldest son, Mitchell Jr., had just announced his run for Senate, whose family was American royalty in everything but name. Chester kept talking through the speaker, his voice filling the surgical suite. The letter explains everything. Penelope was 19, working as an intern at his company. They had an affair. When she got pregnant, he paid her to disappear, to give you up. But she kept track of where you went. She knew the Thornfields had you. Does he know about me? I managed to ask, my professionalism somehow keeping my hand steady as I resumed the surgery. That's the thing, Roland. According to Penelope's letter, he does. He's always known. And get this, Thornfield Pharmaceuticals' biggest distribution contract. It's with Cray Industries. Has been for 20 years. The same year you turned 12, when you'd have started asking real questions about family resemblance. The meeting with Mitchell Cray was set for the following Tuesday at his corporate headquarters in Chicago, a glass and steel tower that scraped the clouds. I sat across from him in his top-floor office, the city sprawling beneath us like a kingdom, and saw my own face reflected back at me 30 years into the future. Same green eyes, same stubborn chin, same way of drumming fingers on the desk when thinking. Your mother was special, he said quietly, his voice carrying a weight of old regret. I was 28, married, running the company my father built, and completely stupid. When Penelope told me about you, I panicked. I thought money could make it disappear, make it clean, make it like it never happened. Instead, you've been watching me my whole life, I said, the pieces finally clicking together. The Thornfields needed a distribution contract to stay afloat in the late 90s. I needed to know you were okay. It seemed like a perfect arrangement. They got their contract. I got quarterly updates about your life disguised as business meetings with Gordon. So, you bought my exile? I said, the anger rising again. When Patricia wanted me out, you paid them to destroy my life. Mitchell's jaw tightened, the same way mine did when I was defensive. Patricia got greedy 6 months ago. She knew who you really were, figured it out from some old photographs at a business dinner. She threatened to go public about you unless I helped them financially and ensured you'd never have a legal claim to either family's fortune. She was going to destroy my son's political career, my family's reputation, everything we'd built. So you chose them over me, again. No, Mitchell said firmly, standing up and moving to the window. I chose to protect all of my family, including you. The veterinary practice you started? Who do you think your anonymous angel investor was? That scholarship to veterinary school that appeared just when you needed it? The sudden availability of that perfect building for your clinic at below-market rent? The mysterious benefactor who covers the bills for every animal whose owner can't pay? My world tilted again. Every piece of luck I'd thought I'd earned, every break I'd gotten, had been him pulling strings from the shadows. I don't need your protection anymore, I told him, standing to face my father for the first time, but I won't be anyone's secret anymore. Your other children deserve to know they have a brother. Your wife deserves the truth. Mitchell aged 10 years in that moment. My son's political career will be destroyed. The scandal will ruin everything. Then it ruins everything. I've spent 32 years living a lie. I won't spend another day doing it. We reached a compromise that surprised us both. I wouldn't go public, but Mitchell would acknowledge me privately to his family. His wife, Rebecca, remarkably, already suspected something. I always wondered about the veterinary charity donations, she said when we met a week later. Mitchell doesn't even like dogs, but suddenly he's funding animal hospitals across the Midwest. My half-siblings took it differently. Mitchell Jr. was furious at first, then curious, then oddly protective. If this gets out, we control the narrative, he said, already thinking like the politician he was becoming. Long-lost brother reunited with family. American dream story. The twins, Sarah and Samuel, both 25, were fascinated. We always wanted an older brother, Sarah said. Mitchell Jr. doesn't count because he's boring. The youngest, Catherine, just 21, simply hugged me. Does this mean you can teach me how to drive? Because everyone else in this family is terrible at it. As for the Thornfields, their company went bankrupt 6 months later when Cray Industries pulled their contracts. Patricia called me once, crying about how I destroyed them. You destroyed us first, I said. You had 32 years to tell me the truth. You chose greed instead. Quincy, Bridget, and Dustin reached out separately. We're rebuilding slowly. They're still my siblings in every way that matters, even if Patricia's poison tried to destroy that. Dustin lives with me now, getting sober, working at my clinic, learning that family isn't about blood or money or names on trust funds. But the real gift came when I met Eleanor Cray, Mitchell's mother, my grandmother, 93 years old and sharp as a surgical scalpel. I always wanted another grandson, she said, patting my hand with fingers that felt like birch bark, especially one who saves animals instead of shipping boxes around the world. You get your kindness from Penelope. I met her once, you know, before you were born. She had the gentlest soul, just like you. My practice is thriving. Melanie and I got married last spring in a small ceremony with Chester Pike as my best man and all my siblings, both sets, in attendance. Mitchell walked me down the aisle, a reversal that made him cry. The Thornfields weren't invited, but I heard Patricia watched from across the street, standing in the rain like a ghost of the mother she never really was. Standing there, surrounded by my real family, the one I chose and the one I found, I realized something profound. The Thornfields were right about one thing: I was never really one of them. I was always meant for something different, something better, something true. Blood in your veins doesn't make you family. Love in your heart does. Sometimes losing everything you thought you were is the only way to discover who you really are. The $50,000 check from the Thornfields? I framed it, never cashed it. It hangs in my office next to a photo of me at 3 months old, under a small plaque that reads, "The price of truth is always worth more than the cost of lies." My name is Roland Cray now. I legally changed it last month. Not because I wanted Mitchell's fortune, but because I wanted my truth. The Thornfields sent a cease and desist letter about using their name anyway, which my half-brother's law firm gleefully responded to with a picture of my new driver's license. If you've made it this far in my story, you know that family isn't about DNA or inheritance or whose name you carry. It's about who shows up when your world falls apart and who helps you build it back. Stronger and more honest than before. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, if you've ever felt like you didn't belong, like you were living someone else's truth, know that your real family is out there, waiting for you to find them. Sometimes they're the people who raised you. Sometimes they're the people you choose, and sometimes they're the people whose blood you share. But they're always the people who see you for who you really are and love you anyway. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below about your own family revelations or the moments when you discovered who you really are. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more true stories that remind us all that life's biggest surprises often lead to our greatest transformations. Remember, you are more than the lies told about you. You are more than the secrets kept from you. You are exactly who you're meant to be, and that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything.